My Positive Perspective Internet Show today, where we feature individuals and groups who share the common goal of improving the local Charleston community. Today's episode is brought to you by On Purpose Adventures. For a great time, be sure to check out onpurposeadventures.com. Joining me on today's episode is Adam White. So how you doing, Adam?
Doing wonderful. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Today's episode, we wanted to discuss something, children's neuroblastoma cancer. Of course, you have a nonprofit aimed at alleviating that ailment. But there are certain things about it that the public doesn't know in general, like maybe symptoms. You know those types of things. You can talk about that.
Yeah, I could definitely dig into that. Basically, neuroblastoma is the most common cancer among infants, a solid tumor common cancer among infants. The third most common amongst children. It's typically about a 50 to 60% cure rate, which is not great. It needs to be a lot better than that. It's actually one of the most detrimental childhood cancers. It's a very deadly form of childhood cancer. It's a cancer of the sympathetic nervous system, so it attacks the nervous system. You can find it attached to children's adrenal glands, which are a part of the kidney. So that's usually where it's found. And like I said, it's a cancer of the sympathetic nervous system. So basically, it's a very deadly disease. It takes a lot to defeat. If the child relapses, there's a 30% chance of survival. 30%. So those are the odds that someone I know son had, which Chase. But he's alive and with us today. But I unfortunately know some other children weren't so lucky. So that's something that's basically a little roundabout about neuroblastoma. A lot of people think it's a cancer of the brain, and it's not necessarily. It's usually found in the abdominal region,
internal organs.
Exactly, and so. When Chase and actually a couple other children that I know were diagnosed, it was discovered through a limp that the child had. And obviously the typical aches and pains. I mean, when you have a tumor the size of a football or larger in your body,
you're going to complain about something.
Exactly, and sometimes it takes time for those children to actually start to speak out against that because they're worried about they're going to whine or cry, and maybe the parent will know. But like I said, it's a very common childhood cancer among infants. So some of these children are 2.5, 3 years old. They can't necessarily interpret what's going on with themselves very well, and sometimes people can miss it. But the symptoms can vary pretty wide. But usually it's the aches and pains. The child's got a limp or something of that nature.
Are there any sorts of foods that may help a child, in prevention or things?
Sure. Well, as far as prevention goes, it's very tricky because, as an oncologist once told me, there's no known environmental causes for neuroblastoma in particular. There are some cancers, obviously, that are caused by the environment you're in, by the foods you eat, by the drugs you take, by the alcohol you consume, and so on and so forth. Well, with childhood cancer, that's not as much as the thing. It's usually, a cell mutation in the body. The body just kind of decides, and sometimes it's a gene. But neuroblastoma, there's no known environmental cause. But what we do know is some of these children are just born with cancer, and some children, it's not like they come out of the womb eating cheeseburgers and smoking cigarettes. It's kind of still puzzling to researchers and to oncologists, children's oncologists across the country and the world, and something that they're still learning to diagnose and treat. I think the biggest thing about that is they're finding more, real customized approaches to these diseases where they can go in and just attack the tumor, just attack the cancer, as opposed to attacking the entire body and having a detrimental side effect on the body. So,
and if you don't remember last year when I was doing my radio show, I had I interviewed an author who wrote a book called How to Defy Your DNA. And they would actually look at cells when the baby was still in the womb and they could deliver chromosomes or ribosomes into genes that were precancerous.
Sure.
And turn those bad genes off. And it was interesting. The author was from the United Kingdom, and I asked him, what gave him the interest in doing this, and he had a son born with one kidney.
Mm-hmm.
And that was his, drive. With your drive in particular, you mentioned just about Chase, it's about more kids. Maybe you can talk about another success story.
Yeah, there's quite a few actually.
Yeah, sure. That's good.
There's two local boys, one a different Chase, not the Chase that we found in the organization the name of, a kid named Chase Town. And he was diagnosed kind of the same way that Chase was diagnosed. He was actually diagnosed at a younger age, I think less than 2.
Mm-hmm.
And, he had several treatments. He had, a lot of children and just basically treating cancer in general. You have the diagnosis, and then you have, your radiation, which, goes after the tumor and zaps that. And then you have the chemo, and, which also helps fight the disease and treat the body. And then you can have, you have to have surgery a lot. A lot of children need to have the tumor removed, and sometimes complications can happen with that. Well, with Chase Town, he basically had those typical protocols, as they call them, and he ended up, doing okay. He's doing great now. I think pretty sure he's 5 years removed,
Mm-hmm.
Which is a good sign. Usually if you're 5 years or less from being diagnosed and being cured, or in remission, and you have clean scans, as they say. They go in and they scan the children's bodies and the people's bodies to see if they have any sign of disease. Well, they call that no evidence of disease.
Okay.
So if they find that there's evidence of disease, that's not good. That means the kid has cancer. He has to go back to treatment.
Mm-hmm.
But luckily with Chase Town, he's doing great. There's another child locally named Cooper. Cooper's mom actually serves on our board. Her name is Lisa Cates, but Cooper Cates is another success story. I'm not as familiar with the actual number of chemo treatments and radiation both of them had, much less Chase had, but I mean, you have to understand their chemo and radiation treatments are in the dozens, some of them. So I mean, anywhere from 8 to 12 chemo and radiation treatments apiece, and then some of them to multiple surgeries. So for them to live through that is an amazing sign and a telltale sign of the success of the doctors and the research.
Right, and then you mentioned the research, things that need funding. Certainly, all these chemos and operations don't come cheap. And there is help out there financially to families of this disease. Maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, so I mean, Chase After Cure it primarily funds research and raises awareness. That's our mission. But that doesn't stop us. We have a great consortium that we're involved in called the NMTRC, which is the Neuroblastoma Medulloblastoma Translational Research Consortium. It's a combination of 20 different hospitals and foundations across the country, roughly. And basically, we all work together to try to find the best research to pull from and to find the best clinical trials for the children. But we also find that there's a lot of resources within that consortium. There's also another collaboration or coalition called the Coalition Against Childhood Cancer, which is a coalition of 90 organizations across the country. They all are under a certain pillar, so advocacy, family support, research, so on and so forth. And they offer an opportunity for us to say, hey, well, we don't necessarily support funding for, if you need help paying your bills and so on, but we do know the right person.
Right.
So we can connect them with the right resources, and that's something we take pride in. And just the experience. I mean, we have a mom whose son had childhood cancer on our board. We have a mom who started our foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been through it, so they know a lot, and they can convey a lot to those who need it.
Sure. Well, education goes a long way with this disease. Well, thank you so much, Adam.
Thank you for having us. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you all for tuning in to My Positive Perspective, and have a great day.
On a sunny day, I feel my thoughts drift away. Only good vibes and good times living in my brain. On a sunny day, catch me. Damping in the shade, feeling so fine and so high. hope all my efforts will one day pan out. The love within you'll never be without. So I roll, feeling strong and so invincible.